Welcome back to Runway from the Rav, a Project Runway podcast. My name is Riley.
And I'm Maggie.
Today we'll be discussing Project Runway All-Stars Season 6, Episode 9, Posen on the Red Carpet. But it's Zach Posen, not posing, okay?
I will say that's good. That's clever.
Yeah, I like a good, clever title. Some of them this season have been pretty good. Some, thrown for a loop by Betty Boop, unforgivable. So we join our designers walking down Fifth Avenue, which I know two things about New York City. And one of them is that Fifth Avenue is kind of a place to be. Mm-hmm. And they're walking down and the designers are talking about ooh, we're on Fifth Avenue. Where are we going? Wherever we are, it's going to be cool. And they end up going into Zach Posen's work area. So last week we got to see Isaac Mizrahi, his work throughout time at the museum. And then this time we got to see Zach Posen in the now. If that makes sense, in his workroom, business area. And Zach and Alyssa Milano are there, and they have challenged the designers to create red carpet looks that showcase their signature techniques. So their unique signature techniques. Now, in previous seasons, there were designers with techniques that I think it was pretty obvious. Like Erin, gonna use applique. Keeney, gonna use some horsehair, wiggly hems. Mm-hmm. Dom probably gonna mess around with patterns, maybe even Amanda color blocking. But this season it's kind of a couple mess with structure, and that's it. So not a lot. And it's of course going to be a one-day challenge. Mm-hmm. But the twist this time is they're not going to get their fabrics from Mood. Instead, they get to choose their fabrics from Zach Posen's own collection. So this is leftover fabric from work and pieces he's done already. As he mentions later on with the judging, he was I used the rest of that fabric for, this famous person's look. So that was kind of neat. And then obviously they're high-end luxury fabrics, really nice. He's these are laces from Italy and silks from France, or vice versa, I don't remember. And all the designers oh my God. It is a bunch of different colors, different weights of textiles, different types. So everybody got to pick from that. Stanley got to go first because he won last week. But I don't know if there was a rule that you could only pick 2 bolts or however how many yardage you could get. I don't know. They didn't state any rules like that.
Yeah, I bet there was though behind the scenes.
Yeah, just because obviously it's expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure if there were rules, but Anthony got 7 yards of something. But again, was it a joke? I don't know. And do I know how many yards go into a ball gown? No, I do not. No. No, I don't. We also learned that there'll be no Anne full and wider this week. She's out. So they will be mentoring each other, which I think is a first for Project Runway. Yeah. They've just always had the mentor there, whether it was Anne or Zana or Tim. So that's kind of interesting because obviously it's a competition. So it's even if you kind of get along with other people, you may not be fully forthright with your mentorship because obviously you don't want them to win or to give them a comment and then it's part of that's my idea if they win. So kind of an odd choice. They could have just brought back in Popeye, or Betty Boop to give the mentor, or have Zach Posen do it. If he was already part of this episode, that would have been nice for him to, but whatever.
Yeah.
We'll get to the fun of them mentoring each other. And they got to sketch in Zach's workroom too. So it's kind of nice to see them sketch in different areas. And then we learn that this week they have a prize again. So they don't always, but they do this week. They'll get to be the wardrobe designer for a Lifetime movie actress for a Lifetime movie event. So they didn't say which actress, they didn't say which Lifetime movie, considering that this season was filmed potentially in 2016, I've heard. It's probably already come and gone. It's probably already done. But Lifetime movies, normally not A-list celebs. So still a nice opportunity. And for the winner, particularly knowing their background this week, which we won't spoil quite yet. But just knowing that, it's probably a nice in maybe to that type of industry. But it also, the show's on Lifetime. So it's kind of they probably just picked some C-list actress from some random movie. He was this guy, this person's gonna dress you. Good luck. I don't know. So they got to sketch in Zach's space, and then they went back to the workroom where they had buckets of thread and bobbins, which I don't know if they always do, But I feel like they buy, like, their things that move normally, like buttons and thread. So that was kind of interesting to just see them, like, digging through all these, like, thread things. And, like, immediately Joshua was like, I just had to make sure I got my thread and my sewing station set up. And I'm just like, oh, whoa. Okay, Joshua. So then we're in the workroom. There's only 7 designers left. So they're pretty spaced out. And a few people are struggling. Ken was kind of struggling with the fabric he chose. He thought it was going to go a certain way, and it didn't. Joshua was struggling because the technique he chose, called pin tucking. One, I don't think we've ever seen him do that before, so I wouldn't necessarily call it his signature technique, but we'll get to that with the judging. But that's a very time-consuming technique. And on day 1, since it's a 1-day challenge, they get 12 hours, and like the next morning they get like an hour or 2 while their models are getting their hair and makeup done. So it's like not a lot of time to do such an intricate, like very precise type of technique. So he was struggling just in terms of time management. And then we'll get to the mentorship, I guess. So the beloved button bag makes its return. We have not seen the button bag yet this season, although it may have been used to determine like where the designer sat in the pairings challenge or things like that, but we haven't seen it yet. And I think even last season on the normal season, I feel like we haven't seen the button bag in a while. We've heard of the button bag, but I haven't seen it.
No, not this season.
In a while. So the designers like pass it around and pull out a button, and that will be who they mentor. And some of the pairings, obviously because it's chance, were quite interesting. So Stanley picks out Anthony's name to mentor, and Anthony was like excited because Stanley's a little older and has this more refined kind of simple style. So he's like, ooh, like come critique me. But then Helen got Edmund as her mentor, and she's like, I feel like he's just gonna tell me like keep going. And sure enough, Edmund comes over, asks a few questions. Like he was, like, hey, what kind of girl do you think would wear this to the red carpet, or like, what actress? And then he's like asking a couple other questions. She's like, well, good luck. And Helen's just like, really? I think Ken was Joshua's or Joshua was Ken's, something like that. I think if Joshua was Ken's mentor. Okay. And Ken's face was just like,
I do not remember.
Like,
honestly.
I don't. And then Ken is Fabio's mentor. So it must have been Joshua was Ken's mentor, and Ken's just like dead face while Joshua's talking. And Joshua's like, that went fine. And then Ken was Fabio's mentor, and Ken was like, I like it. And I have a quote later, but he was just like, looks great. And then Helen was Stanley's mentor. And she, like, Stanley, because they were making red carpet looks, a lot of people did, like, gowns to the floor. And Stanley was like, yep, I'm going to have to go to the floor. And she's like, well, I don't think it's bad if you show a little shoe. And in the background, the sister wives, but particularly Ken and Anthony are sitting there like, no! Like, they're, like, shaking their head, mouthing the word no, because Georgina and Alyssa Milano have both pointed out several times this season they watch the length of dresses very carefully. And if you can see shoe or foot and it doesn't look like it's supposed to be seen for a gown, they really dislike that because it looks like you cut it to the wrong length. So some of it's, I think, just like the model might be taller in shoes than what you measured, but it's like you should kind of know that and be prepared. But so it's like, Helen, are you trying to like, what are you trying to do to Stanley here? And she's just like in her like talking head. She's like, well, I don't know if I was helping or not. And it's just like, okay, Helen, whatever. Any other workroom moments for you? Or like, do you want to talk about the Zach Posen thing?
I'll say like, I was like at least excited that is Zach Posen because we like Zach Posen.
Yes.
And I felt like, for the first time in a while, maybe even the whole season, the designers seemed like excited, and like it felt to me at least like they were putting more effort into it, and like we're trying really hard because they're like, oh, it's Zach Posen, gotta impress him, and like I don't know, they all seemed a little bit like starstruck, even though some of them may have already met him. Have they? Or would they?
That's what I wasn't sure, because like Joshua, I think, and Fabio both said nice to meet you, but I didn't see their seasons, so I wasn't sure if that was before Zach Posen's time or what, or if they were like eliminated early. Like, I truly don't know. Like, I think the only person left that I was actually there for their season is Edmund and Ken. And yeah, Ken, it's hard to tell with Ken because he was like, like Zach Posen's type of designers is a dying breed, which is usually like, positive, but then sometimes Ken, according to his Twitter, then sometimes it's like, so it's hard to tell. And then Edmund, like, doesn't get any speaking parts because he's Edmund. He doesn't really have a lot to say. Same thing with Stanley. They like, hardly ever anything to say. Mm-hmm. Any workroom moments for you, though?
I mean, I thought, I don't know, that was an interesting twist to have them mentor each other. I guess, like, I don't know. I'm just an angelic person. I would never sabotage anybody. And so that just didn't occur to me that, like, they would use that as part of their strategy or, like, potentially use that to kind of, like, sway them maybe into doing, like, making a bad move. So I thought that was kind of, like, sort of a fun twist. Like, just a little one, but I don't know. I thought that was kind of amusing.
Well, it's interesting that this happened on a season where we don't have a teacher, because last season we had Amy, and I think Alex was on the season before, or the same season with Amy, and they were both, like, were design teachers, kind of like Tim, at colleges. Okay. And so they might be more helpful as a mentor because they're like, well, I'm confident in my abilities, so me actually helping you isn't going to make me lose or anything. But none of these folks, I don't think, are teachers or instructors. So yeah, and then everybody is selfish in their own ways. Every single person on the planet is selfish somewhere. And some people more obviously than others, like trying to be like, well, I don't think it matters if you don't hem it, but yeah, I think the producers definitely had that in mind.
Yeah. It's just interesting to think about, like, I guess if it were me, I guess I would sabotage, but sort of in an unintentional way. Like, maybe if I, like, hated something, maybe I wouldn't say anything, and I'd just be like, yeah, that looks okay. Like, maybe I wouldn't convey my, like, absolute truest feelings. Well, that's kind of sabotagey.
Yeah, I mean, that's what Anthony was kind of doing last week with Merlene. Like, she asked him just because he was next to her, like, what do you feel about this? But she asked so specific of a question that then he was just like, yeah, that looks sharp. But he's like, but her whole design's terrible. Right. And Ken kind of did something similar. I don't want to spoil the quote for later, but yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I like to think that I'm a helpful person at, like, in most times of my life. But yeah, if it was a big competition, I don't think I'd outright lie. But yeah, I might withhold my full opinion. But then again, different tastes. So what I think looks terrible, obviously, based off this podcast, like, the judge is like, I love it. So what do I know? Not fashion. Anything else?
No, I don't think so.
We did have a wound this time. Josh must have hurt his finger or something. It wasn't like a big, like, wound, stop everything, but he's just like, I'm gushing blood over here, I'm a geyser or something. Luckily, we didn't have to see it. As a slightly squeamish person, especially with needles, ooh, I really get the heebie-jeebies. But he, like, moved on and was fine. And then everybody at the end was struggling. Like, Fabio in his talking head was like, I don't think anybody feels super confident right now. Because one day challenge and some of the techniques they chose, like tailoring or pin tucking, it's just time-consuming. And then using some of these fabrics, that they might not be fully used to because they're very expensive or thicker or whatever. Drape a different way. So everybody was kind of struggling at the end. Otherwise, you ready to move on to the runway?
Yep.
So our guest judges this week were obviously Zach Posen, and then our other judge was Rosie Perez, who's an actress and an activist. I'd never heard of her, but when they mentioned her couple, like, movies and TV shows, they weren't anything I've seen. But, there she was.
Yeah.
So first up down the runway, we had Stanley, and his signature technique was tailoring. And he put down a red gown. In the front, it's got this little, like, crisscross thing across the neck. And then the skirt kind of falls down into these big, wide circle. And in the back, it's got, like, a V cut, or just a V shape to the back where those little straps then from the front of the neck come down. And this skate maybe, like, just an inch above the floor in parts. bodycon at the top, and then around like the mid thigh kind of falls away. What did we think of Stanley's?
This one, I thought it was alright. Probably one of Stanley's stronger looks. I just feel like, I don't know, somehow everything Stanley makes, it just feels very stiff to me. And so, like, he had a very, like, square cut for, like, the neckline part. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't a fan of that. Like, this girl didn't have, like, a full chest anyways. But it just, like, it really flattened everything. Mm-hmm. And I just didn't find that super flattering. I mean, like, it was a nice dress, but I didn't feel like, I don't know, I wasn't blown away. What'd you think?
I will say Stanley's is like a jewel tone red. 5 of the 7 designers made a red dress for a red carpet event, and then the other 2 used blue. Yeah. So it was like, oh my gosh, like by the end, it was like, this is a lot of red dresses. I like the color of this. I think he chose a good fabric. I think it's fine. But there's nothing special about this at all. And to be honest, the tailoring, who doesn't tailor when you're making custom clothes? Like, to me, this doesn't seem overly tailored. Like, I'm thinking of the tailoring that Keeney used to do, where he would, like, literally line stuff and double, triple hem it and do all this crazy stuff in one day. Or, like, folks we'll get to Helen in a minute, but, like, her tailoring to me looked a little more purposeful than this. Like, to me, it's like, it's a dress. I mean, it looks well made, but, like,
yeah.
Tailoring, I don't know. There's not a lot here. There's no real darting. There's no real, it's just a couple folds at the bottom. Whatever. He was chosen for critiquing the top, however. Next up, we had Helen, and her signature technique was corsetry. And she said, that's why I buy boning every week. But I thought back to her previous looks, at least the last couple weeks, I don't remember corsets. Like, no.
Definitely not last week.
Yeah, and certainly not like a visible corset, but she said this is underneath. She put down a strapless red gown. Now, hers is slightly more of like a wine, like a slightly darker red. Couple different fabrics at play here. One more ox bloody red and one more brighter red. It's kind of got like this upward scoop on the front over the bust. And then it's strapless and sleeveless. If there is a corset, it's underneath. There's kind of like this miniature, like, cummerbund, like, at her waist. Is that the corset? I don't know. And then the skirt is like 2 panels of fabric where the darker, kind of more, I don't know, plumier color is in, like, the inside panel on the front and the back. And then the sides are that full red. And then it's real bodycon all the way down to about the mid-knee, to the knee, and then it kind of flares out just a bit, and again, is like an inch above the floor, like kind of dragging on the floor. What did we think of Helen's?
This one, I don't know, I kind of felt the same as I did about Stanley's. Like, I don't know, it wasn't super special, like, didn't really wow me. I like her neckline better. She, like, kind of made a rounded shape, but again, like, it was just super simple, and I didn't feel like, to me, it doesn't look like it fits that well. Like, it seems too tight. Maybe it's just, like, the fabric that's in the middle is, like, it's kind of got, like, a sheen to it or something. It's, like, a little bit shiny or something. Mm-hmm. And so you just really see those, like, lines where it's pulling. Like, it's obviously supposed to be, like, a very tight dress. And it doesn't look like, I'm not saying it looks like the model is, like, popping out of it or anything, because she's definitely not. It just seems like it's just pulling, like, it looks uncomfortable to me. But, anyways, what'd you think?
Yeah, to me it looks like it's, like, puckering. Yeah. That she didn't do it right. I like the idea of, like, the inside kind of panel, and that's what I meant with the tailoring, where she, like, sewed 2 pieces together to make this kind of shape. Mm-hmm. It's just the colors are too close together. And then I don't get the corsetry from this at all. Like, maybe underneath there's a corset and, like, boning, but I can't really tell. And then that little, like, there's, like, a 4-inch, like, tall section that goes all the way around her midsection that's just more of that, like, kind of wrinkly fabric where I'm just like, is that super tight? I don't know. But to me, this is, like, the little black dress of red gowns. Mm-hmm. It's just like, yeah, it's there. Anybody, with decent shoulders could probably wear it. But it doesn't look super flattering. Like, at least in the still image from the front, there is so much, like, puckering. It doesn't look intentional. Maybe it was, but it doesn't look it. But Helen was our only safe person, because we're getting down. So next week, no one's safe.
Yeah.
You know, next week we're already to the top 6. So she was safe. Next up, we had Edmund, whose signature technique was ruffles. Now you all know. Not a fan of the ruffle. Okay, not a huge fan. And
No.
Edmund does do ruffles. I will give him that. I don't think he's like... There's been other people who do ruffles. Like, he's not the only ruffles person. Right. But I think on this season, he's like the last remaining ruffler. He also put down a red dress.
Yes.
Now, I want to make it known that at Zach Posen's area, he had like a rainbow of colors, including the shades black and white and gray, all the colors, different materials, and everybody seemed to choose like red silks. Like, and maybe that's, you know, they're just drawn to it like, oh, this is French. Like, I don't know. But it was just like, oh, okay. So he put down this little red dress. On the top, he made a kind of like a rose, although to me it looks more like a carnation, out of like red ruffles. Like, he just kept like spinning them around to make like this like carnation that's almost her entire top, but it's slightly off center facing to the right. And then there's like one little strap that comes out of that, like a messenger bag, and that crosses diagonally across her back, but otherwise it's sleeveless and backless. And then the skirt itself is basically like a super tight all the way down to like the mid calf, and then it flares out a bit and then has a slit up one side. What did we... And his fabric has a bit of a pattern to it, but it's hard to tell what it was. It's like red on red. What did we think of Edmund's?
I thought this one, it was just super weird. Basically, to me, it just looks like she's got a loofah slung over her chest.
Yeah.
That's what I see. I mean, it's another red dress. The red is pretty. It's fine. I mean, all the fabrics are beautiful. But, I don't know. Like, I didn't hate the like flower shape that he did, but it was just, I don't know, it's over the top, and like, yeah, it reads like a loofah in the bottom of the dress. I just feel like it's very unflattering and just as unresolved. Like, he put so much work into the top and then nothing into the bottom, really. What do you think?
Yeah, the skirt's just like a straight, tight skirt to the bottom. With then, like, oh, she can't walk, so I'll make a slit up the leg. Alyssa Milano kept saying that the top reminded her of a pillow, and I have seen pillows that look just like this. Mm-hmm. To me, yeah, I could see loofah in it. I don't like that it's, like, off to the side, but not enough off to the side where you could see... Like, I think if it was smaller and more off to the side, you could still see her nice silhouette on the other side. Because, like, this is a red carpet. Who's this going to be flattering on?
Yeah.
Like, the back is kind of, you know, a little sexy, showing a little skin, but then that cross makes it look like she's got, like, a bag on the front. But then you turn her around and no, she's got, like, this, like, ruffle backpack that she's wearing on her front. Like, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And then it's ruffles, so I hate it. Edmund was chosen for take in the bottom. Next up, we had Anthony, and his signature technique was sculpting, and we have seen him do that on the season, so it wasn't completely out of left field. And he ended up using this, like, kind of light blue fabric. Not quite powder blue, but a light blue. And he made this sleeveless dress that kind of has this asymmetrical front to it over the bust. And then it's kind of gathered in at the waist, like her true waist. And then is very tight down to about, like, the top of the foot, I would say. And it kind of looks like it's just been pulled from behind and clipped. Like how they, like, try wedding dresses on you, you know, because they just get bigger sizes and, like, clip you in. Mm-hmm. Only, instead of being clipped in the back, it's, like, the fabric was, like, sewn together in one seam, and then just the open bits that were left were, like, hemmed and just left in this, like, river of two ends. Like, it's indescribable. What did we think of Anthony's?
This one, I wanted to like more than I did. I mean, first off, I love the blue. Because, of course, I do. But as far as the design, I like it from the front. And that's about it. Like, I don't get the back. Like, I guess, like, I think it's kind of cool. And, like, he really did go for his, like, technique. Like, this dress definitely does, like, attempt to show that off. But yeah, the way you described it was really good. Like, It's indescribable. I don't know. It's just like, yeah, a weird river joining mesh of fabric. Like, I don't know. But it does look cool from the front. What'd you think?
Yeah, from the front, it looks like she's taken like a blanket and is like holding it up with her underarms. And then in the back, it looks a little suggestive of a female body part, but it's blue instead of, another color. I wish the back sculpturing had more purpose. It reminds me, I know I've brought him up like 12 times in this podcast, but Keeney once made a look that had a very similar, only it was pink and very unfortunate in the back, a very similar look of like this like kind of ribbon but like wiggly. It was just like, wow, what an odd choice. It just looks like he like clipped it with like, something that holds like your chip bag closed in like 4 places so it looks tight in the front. Like the front makes me a little interested to see the back, but then the back is just kind of like I wish it did more. Let's put it that way. But it's okay. Zach Posen described this as blue milk, like a glass of blue milk, which just makes me think of Star Wars because that's what Luke drinks.
Yes.
He was chosen for critiquing the top. Next up we had Joshua, and his signature technique was pin tucking. And it's his signature technique because he's never done it on the show before. So he ended up putting down this pink and like orange, but it looks kind of red in this image. Again, another dream of Dunkin' Donuts here.
Yes.
And so the top is pin tucked, but it's got a very deep V in the front, like a very, very deep revealing V in the front. And then the back is basically a cutaway. So the pin tucking is basically the 2 tiny panels in the front. And it's pink and orange together. And then that's over a skirt that is got orange panels down the sides and then in the back. And then it's kind of a high-low in the front. And then in the back it's got a tiny bit of a train because that high-low. And then just a bunch of like fabric fluffing. What did we think of Joshua's?
Well, I think I've got an unpopular opinion, but I like the skirt. Even Joshua himself agreed that the top was not great. And yeah, I stand with that. The top is not the best. It's very unfinished, unresolved. Not his best. But I don't know, I like the skirt. I thought it looked really cool, and that part to me was well done. I didn't like his color combo choice, like you said. Very Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah, and we just had Dunkin' Donuts last week as well. Someone else.
Yeah. So, not the best color combo. And yeah, his technique, it made no sense. But I didn't hate the skirt. I kind of like the skirt. What do you think?
I think the color story here is terrible, and you can tell that he didn't like his technique because his model has extensions in, and her hair covers most of it. So you spent all this time doing this pin tucking technique, but this is like one misstep away from revealing your boob on the red carpet, which people have done, but is not something normally your average red carpet walker wants to be doing. So to me, the top of this has a huge taste issue. I don't mind the high-low skirt. I just wish it was in different colors. This is so clashy to me. It's just like, ugh, why? And then, yeah, having the model styled this way with her hair pulled to the side in the front, all down, it's just like you're hiding absolutely all of your work. And then, yeah, it just looks like she's going to pop out of it. He was chosen for teak in the bottom. Next up, we had Fabio, and his signature technique was pleating, which we have seen him use. Mm-hmm. I think he's also worked with fringe and, like, braiding a couple times. But, pleating, hey, it's, something different. And he ended up putting down kind of like this like slate blue, I would describe it as, type dress. So it's real kind of flowy. So it's got a little V cut in the neck. And then it does have sleeves, but they're kind of like the cutaway kind to the elbow. So they're like kind of there, but you can kind of still see the arm. The dress itself has a real tall slit up the front of it. And then it kind of flows around behind her. And there's big pleats in the skirt. And then the back has a V cut in the back, slightly deeper than the front. And it's kind of like 2 big pleat panels that flow down behind her. What did we think of Fabio's?
This one, I liked it a lot. I think it's more successful in the front, the back. When it was walking, it looked better. But here in this picture, it looks like a lot of fabric just kind of hanging out. But when it walked, I thought it was like, I don't know, it was a cool silhouette, and it just like felt like cool and breezy and just, I don't know, I liked it. It's kind of it's a unique look for a red carpet. I don't know if I would necessarily like pair those together, but as just the design itself, I liked it. What do you think?
I think this color is beautiful, and I feel like it's a color you don't normally see on the red carpet. But yeah, I think the front is nice. The back loses me a little bit. It looks like she's wearing like a gigantic vest or something. But yeah, it doesn't feel maybe quite as like oomphy enough as red carpet, but maybe that's where we're going as fashion. I think the judges discussed that a little bit, include like Isaac, I think, brought it up. That's like maybe this is what people will be wearing in a couple years from now, because things just keep getting more and more casual as a culture. So I could see that, and it's very pretty. I do like it, and I like the way that he styled it with like the slicked back hair. He was chosen for critique in the top, and then last this week we had Ken, and his signature technique was also sculpting, which we have seen him do. So he put down this like bright reddish pink dress, deep V cut in the front, sleeveless, but it's got the like strap of the V cut. Then a full covered back, and then there's a slit in the back, and then on the left side of the hip, there's just a big gathering of fabric that he let kind of drape. And I guess that's his sculpting piece. What did we think of Ken's?
Not my favorite at all. I just, I didn't understand that side piece at all. It's just tacked on. And it just, I don't know, it adds nothing. And then the rest of the dress is just, I don't know, nothing to write home about. What do you think?
This is not one of Ken's stronger pieces. He likes working in red, so I was kind of excited for what he could make, but this is just not his best, and I am so sick of that. Put a random thing on the hip.
Yeah.
Fashion. It just doesn't look sculpted, it doesn't look intentional, it just looks like a mistake. And then he chose a fabric that didn't flow very well, so it just then made that weird shape. It just looked like she rocked it up around her waist and tied it there. It just not great. He was chosen for critique in the bottom.
Yeah.
So that leaves us with Stanley, Anthony, and Fabio in the top, and Edmund, Joshua, and Ken in the bottom. So they go back and sit while the judges deliberate, and Helen is sitting back there. She was the only safe one. And she says, "Do you mind before you tell me, will none of you get offended if I guess who's in the top and bottom?" And they're like, "Yeah, go ahead." She ends up getting it correct. And, and then I think she ended with, Stanley in the top. They're like, "Yeah, you're right." And which probably saved her a little heartache there if she'd been wrong. And Stanley's like, "Yes, I'm in the top and I'm in good company." And Joshua, who's in the bottom, was like, "Well, that's shady to say. We're all talented designers. We all worked really hard." And Stanley was like, "Well, that's not what I meant." And Edmund's like, not Edmund. Joshua was like, "Well, it's really bad." And Helen immediately also gets into it. She's like, "Yeah, it sounds bad. This is offensive." And Stanley's just because he's older than all, he's just like, "I'm not getting into it," and just stares at the wall. He's just like, "You know what, Joshua?" And Helen's like, "Yeah, it's offensive." It's like, Helen, you weren't even part of it. So, what even? I don't know, but, gotta get in that last little weird bit of drama, so I thought I'd bring it up. I also almost forgot. Isaac Mizrahi, we saw a lot of him last week. When the designers come out, before the runway even starts, Alyssa Milano goes through, "It's Georgina from Marchesa, it's Isaac Mizrahi, and Norman." And Norman is something that I think is, built into, Isaac's blazer. And it looked to be, a small cat. Or, a big cat, I should say. But it was small on his shoulder, and it was, this little, glass or, ceramic thing. I don't know. It looked like a cheetah or something, but in black. Just perched on his shoulder. And they referenced it, 3 or 4 times. And I was just like, I'm sorry. In the judging, Isaac was like, "Yes, Isaac agrees. So does Norman." And I'm just like, what is going on here? This is a show for adults. What the heck is this? They often make comments about what Isaac's wearing because he's a little kooky, but it's just we don't need to name it and spend time on this stuff. what? And he's not like a kooky designer. It's just like, Isaac. Like, ugh. I had to bring it up because I just, what the heck? So anyway, back to the judging. Stanley, Anthony, Fabio in the top. Edmund, Joshua, Ken in the bottom. They say, Stanley, you're safe. So it's between Anthony and Fabio for the win. Now, they've both already won before on this season. So it's like, ooh, who's going to win? And it ends up, Anthony is our winner this week. Do we agree with that?
I would have rather it been Fabio. But it's fine. At least it wasn't Stanley. I just didn't want Stanley to win.
Stanley's won quite a bit, to be honest.
Well, and the looks that he wins on upset me. So, What do you think?
I think Anthony makes more sense for the prize.
Yeah.
Than Fabio does. And I could see Anthony's on the red carpet before I saw Fabio's on the red carpet. Because I'm thinking like Oscars or something like that. So, but I think I would have been happy with either of them. But I like to see Anthony win because I like Anthony.
Yeah.
So then we have the bottom, and it's Edmund, Joshua, and Ken. They immediately say, Ken, you're safe. So it's between Edmund and Joshua. I'm sitting there thinking, okay, double limb. But it turns out Joshua got sent home. Do we agree with that?
I mean, it's fine. I personally wanted to see more of Joshua because, like, even though he's super dramatic and, like, a lot of the time he makes stuff that's, like, on the trashy side, I still like it. Like, I like his designs. Sometimes. I don't know. More so, I find his designs way more interesting than Edmund's. So, it's fine. I mean, they all need to go.
This was a win-win for me, because either one of them, I'm like, Edmund makes boring stuff, and I don't know why he's in the top 7. And then Joshua doesn't seem mature enough or professional enough for this to be a full-time career. And I haven't really liked most of his stuff. It always has such a nasty taste issue, or it's just like, what even? So I'm like, either one of you could go home. Joshua's, I guess, is a little more thought-provoking, but, like, not where I want my thoughts to go. So bye-bye, Joshua. So I'll get to my quotes of the week, and then we'll look at our next week's sneak preview. But we're already at our top 6. Yeah. So we're going to be top 4 real soon. So my quotes of the week are a lot of Anthony, because of course. So first we have, I'm not sure what Josh is designing, but if it's true to his aesthetic, I'm sure she'll be naked. And that's Anthony talking about Joshua in the workroom. And then we have Ken on Fabio, because he was Fabio's mentor, and he was like, Fabio's like, do you think this looks good or that? And Ken's like, yeah, I like it. And then we get to his talking head moment, and Ken just looks straight in the camera. He's like, I lied. It was ugly. And he like hangs his head in shame, because they're like the sister wives and everything. But I just like that, like, Ken can be quite two-faced. So can most people, let's be honest. But I just like that he was like, I lied. Next up, we had Anthony, Stanley, and I believe Ken were, like, eating food, talking at the couch, which we don't normally see. But now that there's fewer designers, they're padding the workroom time with some of that, like, hangout time. And Anthony mentioned something about their looks or whatever, and Stanley was like, oh, that's such a great point. And Anthony says, you know, Stanley, I'm not just cute. I just love Anthony's, like, candor. I just really like it. Next up, we had Ken talking about himself as his look is coming down the runway. And he says, it just looks stuck. It's not cute at all. And Ken can be quite harsh on his own designs. I think he's probably, like, his harshest critic. And as someone who's also my harshest critic, I get it. But also as someone who hates that, like, pin it to the hip and just hang it there, it always looks stuck. It always looks unintentional and, like, wrong. And it never looks cute. So I had to agree with that quote. Next up, we have Georgina talking about Anthony's look on the runway. She says, it feels like a paint stroke. It's so light. And I do agree with that. Like, I know that he likes to only do, like, one seam, and that's kind of his signature thing as well. And looking at that dress, I would think it would be hard to make it look so effortless in the back. While I don't particularly like the shape it made, I can't believe that that's, like, one, like, seam. That just seems kind of interesting. And the way the front fits so well, knowing that. It does look lighter than it probably is.
Yeah.
Next up, we had our guest judge, Rosie, on Anthony's piece while he was standing there on the runway. She said, my breasts would look fantastic in this dress from every angle. I'm dying over here. Which is literally exactly how she said it.
Yeah.
Her only critiques. Now, a couple weeks ago, we had Whoopi Goldberg, and every comment she said was about whether or not she or her granddaughters could wear it. Rosie's only critiques were whether or not her boobs would fit into it for every look. And for Anthony's, she thought they would look fantastic. Yep.
It's quality,
Quality judging here. Next up, we had Isaac on Edmund. You took such ravishing fabric and made it look so incredibly inexpensive. Ooh! Ouch! I feel the burn 2 years later, Edmund. And it's true. Yeah. Edmund just makes things look so either boring or he just makes tight club dresses. And it's just like, how is he in the top 7? And he took probably, I don't know how much that fabric that Zach Posen was using. And I don't know exactly which one Edmund chose. But that's probably the most expensive fabric Edmund has ever used in his life. And he made it look cheap. Ugh.
Classic.
But I'm glad Isaac pointed out, because obviously Isaac is used to working with those type of materials, same as Zach Posen. Mm-hmm. Next up, we had Rosie on Edmund's look, saying, I'm sorry, I hate it. Which, to be fair, I also do. And if I was to judge on the show based off my experience from this podcast, that's what I would be doing by this point in the season. I'd be like, I hate it next. Like, I wouldn't even give it the time of day. So I have to give props to Rosie on, like, probably the most honest response all season. I'm sorry, I hate it. Love it. Next up, we had Zach Posen. When they were all deliberating and the designers were off the stage at this point, he says, I think with Joshua, there's a real taste barometer. And I like Zach Posen. As the looks are coming down the runway, he's like leaning forward in his chair. He has this look of extreme, like he's really paying attention. He's trying to see all the details. And in the regular season, ever since Zach started, he likes to see the designs up close, which I love. Because one, we get to see when designers like go the extra mile to like line something or do something unique. But we also see when the designers are like, this is hot glued, or she just tucked this in. This isn't even sewn down. I love that. And they don't get that in All Stars. So Zach Posen is like literally like trying to judge your hem, trying to do all that. And I like the look of pure concentration on his face, because he obviously loves the craft. Like, he loves designing and creating art with fabric, and not everyone's like that. Like, Isaac's just like leaning back talking to Norman. And then, yeah, with Joshua, there is a taste barometer. Very much so. And then my last couple quotes, I didn't really get like a real good closing quote for Joshua, except for he walks into the room and like Fabio gets up and a couple others like kind of hover up to like hug him, and he's just like, no hugs. And honestly, I'm not a hugger. I feel the same. Like, I'm just not a hugger, and especially not on like fake reality TV. Like, no one's gonna miss Joshua. No one cares. And that's proven because the second the door is closed, Anthony goes, the witch is dead. Like, no one even cares that Anthony's gone. That Joshua's gone. I don't necessarily think Joshua was like the witch of the season, but the last few episodes, he's definitely instigated some drama. He has kind of a piss poor attitude, to be honest, around the workroom, and he hasn't really gotten along with anybody, so it's just kind of like, well, ding dong, there they go. Yeah. Do you have anything else to say about this episode?
No. I felt like it started off strong, but then as usual, just crashed and burned. That's how it always goes. Like I was saying earlier at the beginning of our podcast, like, I really did feel like everybody was like amped up because like it's Zach Posen and like you gotta do a really awesome job, and then it was just like, it wasn't like a flop, but it just, I don't know, I thought it was gonna be way more like intense, and it was just like, whatever, it's just another episode.
Yeah,
there we go.
Yeah, it seemed like such an interesting challenge. Like, they're on Fifth Avenue, they're in Zach Posen's, like, workshop, they get to use really nice, expensive fabrics that he's literally used to dress celebrities. They're making red carpet looks with their signature techniques. Like, this should have been one where every single person knocked it out of the park. Mm-hmm. And the fact that, like, not anybody really blew me away, that's like getting a, like, when you have, like, your degree in college, you know, and you get like a C or a D in the class your degree's in. It's like, maybe you should make another choice. Like, this signature technique failed, or you can't make a red carpet dress as a designer. Like, I'm just thinking of like Christian Siriano. I think I heard that he put down 17 different looks for the Oscars this year. And it's like, that's amazing. Now, obviously, Zach Posen puts down quite a few, too. It's like, probably as a designer, making red carpet looks, unless you're making, like, lines to sell at a store, it's like, that's probably your bread and butter. And that's obviously where you can get a little creative and have a little fun, especially if your client's willing to let you, you know, kind of think outside the box and make something really unique to them. So it's just like, you can't even have fun making a red carpet look with your technique. Like, come on. But like everything this season has just been a bit of a disappointment. I won't harp on it too much. If you want to hear more of these discussions, go look at our last 2 episodes because I talked about it at length. But yesterday was International Women's Day, and this show aired, and there's only one woman left. And I will never forget or forgive.
Yeah.
It just blows my mind. But this was the first episode since episode 1 that we lost a male designer, which I just don't understand, especially considering Edmund and Joshua have been making weak looks, and we had women who maybe had one. Yeah, consistently. And Stanley's had a few weak looks as well, where I'm just like, how are you so, Helen, hold out. You're not even my favorite, but hold out. So let's go into next week. They have to make some looks for a music performance on stage. And that someone mentioned that it's like a head-to-head challenge or something like that, which it always is. But I wonder if that means there's like multiple people on the runway or what. But someone just said like,
I don't know if I actually watched the preview.
It was very short. It
Okay.
It was basically just Alyssa Milano saying that like, we're going to do something that's never been done in Post-runway history. You're going to be making something for a music performance on stage, and then a designer was like talking and being like, this is head to head, it's really intense, so I don't know what that means. And then it looks like we're gonna have a rough runway because we had a pretty dicey quote from Georgina Chapman that didn't seem very positive about what she was looking at. So maybe next week will be interesting. Maybe we'll have a musical guest who's kind of interesting. Maybe they'll travel to a musical place. They haven't traveled yet.
Yeah.
So maybe they'll go someplace, you know, I don't know, musical capital of America or something somewhere.
What do you mean? They've traveled. They went to a castle.
That's right. They went to a castle. Yeah. A bouncy castle. And otherwise they just walked around the streets of New York, which is fine. But it seems about the time of season where they might do a little traveling. So I could see if they went to like Memphis or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or, I don't know, some other musical kind of area. I guess we'll see next week, but otherwise I think that's it for us this week. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter at RevRunway. I've been posting some sneak peeks out there to whet your appetite for the full episodes. You can find us on Apple iTunes, you can find us on Google Play, you can find us on Podiant, YouTube, WordPress, your favorite podcast apps. So tweet us, comment us, like us, please. If you could rate and review us on iTunes, that would be amazing. And otherwise, we'll see you next week.